There is a town located an hour east of Los Angeles where the residents live approximately a decade longer than the Americans in the neighboring town. It is the same country, the same supermarkets down the road, the same doctors, the same hospitals, and the same air. And yet, the men of Loma Linda, California, outlive the average American man by several years, and the women outlive the average by even more years on top of that. This is not a mere guess. For more than half a century, researchers have been tracking tens of thousands of the people who live there, documenting what they eat, how they move, what they believe, and when they die. Nearly 100,000 of them signed up for the largest study of its kind ever conducted. Out of all that data, the same handful of habits consistently rise to the surface. Today, I am going to hand you 20 of them. Get a pen because most of these you can start this week, and not one of them requires a prescription. Let me set the table first. The people of Loma Linda are mostly Seventh-day Adventists, a faith community whose beliefs happen to shape their plates, their calendars, and their friendships in ways that, by accident or design, line up almost perfectly with what the science of long life now recommends. The researchers did not pick these people because they were already healthy. They enrolled almost everyone they could find and followed them for decades, the healthy and the not-so-healthy alike, and let the years sort out who lasted. What follows is what the lasting ones had in common. No single person did all 20 perfectly, but the more of these a person stacked up, the longer and stronger they tended to live. So think of this less as a test you pass or fail, and more as a pile of small bets, each one tilting the odds a little further in your favor. One number is worth pausing on before we start counting because it tells you these habits are not small. When the researchers compared the strict vegetarians in the community to the average person in the same state, the vegetarian men were living roughly 9.5 years longer, and the vegetarian women about 6 years longer. 9.5 years. That is not a rounding error or a lucky streak. That is a second retirement, a decade of grandchildren, handed over in exchange for habits that cost less than the standard American diet, not more. As you go through these 20, do not think of them as little tweaks at the edges of your life. Think of them as the building blocks of that extra decade, because that is what the data says they are. The first cluster is the plate, because the plate is where the data is loudest. The strongest single thread running through the long-lived people of Loma Linda is that they ate mostly plants. Not all of them were strict vegetarians, but the ones who leaned hardest toward vegetables, fruits, beans, and grains, and away from meat, lived the longest. That is the foundation under everything else. So, write it at the top. A plate built mostly from the ground, not from the animal. Everything that follows is a detail hung on that frame. Now the details. Beans were not a side dish in these kitchens. They were a staple, eaten most days. And the people who ate them daily showed lower rates of the diseases that end most lives early. So that is the second habit. A cup of beans a day. Lentils, black beans, chickpeas. It almost does not matter which. The third is the one that surprised the researchers most when it first appeared in the data decades ago. A simple handful of nuts several times a week was linked to a measurably longer life, on the order of extra years, not extra months. Walnuts, almonds, whatever you have. A small handful, not a jar in front of the television, a handful. Check your kitchen right now, in your head. Do you have nuts in there? If not, that is the easiest thing on this entire list to fix on your next trip to the store. Let me stay on that handful of nuts for a moment, because it is the most famous finding to ever come out of this community, and it deserves a spotlight. When the researchers first reported it, the medical world did not quite believe it. The people who ate nuts 5 or more times a week were having far fewer heart attacks than the people who almost never did. And the size of the gap translated into years was startling for something as simple as a snack. The reason is the kind of fat inside the nut, the heart-protecting oils paired with the fiber and the minerals all in one small, shelf-stable package. The lesson is not to go buy expensive specialty nuts. It is that the smallest, cheapest habits are often the ones carrying the most weight, and a bag of walnuts on the counter is about as small and cheap as a habit gets. The fourth habit is whole grains over refined ones. Oats, whole wheat, brown rice, barley, the grain with its fiber still attached. The long-lived of Loma Linda ate their carbohydrates in the slow, intact form their grandparents recognized, not stripped down to white flour and sugar. The fifth is one almost nobody expects to see on a longevity list, and it is plain water. One of the older Adventist studies found that the people who drank 5 or more glasses of water a day had notably less heart disease than the people who drank 2 or fewer. Plain water, no supplement, no powder, no cost. The sixth habit is the flip side of the first. They mostly avoided red and processed meat, the bacon, the sausage, the deli slices, the daily steak. These were largely absent from the longest lives, and their absence is as important as anything that was present. Let me stop and do the math on just those first 6, because I have watched people try to overhaul everything at once and quit by the second week. You do not need all 20 tomorrow. If you did nothing but lean your plate toward plants, eat beans most days, keep a handful of nuts in the week, choose the whole grain, drink your water, and ease off the processed meat, you would already be living most of the Loma Linda diet. 6 habits, none of them exotic, none of them expensive. That is the whole food half of a 10-year head start, and you could start every one of them this afternoon. Now move with me off the plate and onto the calendar, because the next cluster is about what they did not put in their bodies. The 7th habit is that they did not smoke. That one is obvious, but it is on the list because it is the single biggest lever any person can pull, and the Adventist community's near total avoidance of tobacco is a large part of why their numbers look the way they do. The 8th is that most of them did not drink alcohol or drank very little. This is where Loma Linda quietly parts ways with the wine-drinking blue zones of Europe, and the data held up anyway, which tells you the wine was never the point in those other places. The moderation and the company around it were. The 9th habit is avoiding sugary drinks entirely. The soda, the sweet tea, and the juice. The liquid sugar that floods the modern day. The long-lived of Loma Linda drank water, and they drank it often, and they left the sweet liquids alone. Hold that 9th one in your head, because there is a 10th that hides right next to it, and it is the rhythm of the day. The Adventist tradition is to eat the big meal early, breakfast like royalty, and to let the day taper down to a light early supper. The long-lived ate most of their food when the sun was up and the body was moving, and went to bed with an empty, quiet stomach. Most of us have that exactly backwards. We skip breakfast, graze through a busy day, and then pile the heaviest meal onto a body that is about to lie down for 8 hours. Flipping that one habit, front-loading the food and lightening the night, is one of the simplest changes on this list and one of the most powerful. Let me change rooms entirely, because the next cluster is not about food at all, and this is where Loma Linda pulls ahead of almost everywhere else. The 11th secret is a weekly day of complete rest. Every week, from sundown to sundown, the Adventist community sets down its work, its errands, its screens, its worries and stops. A full 24 hours of rest, reflection, and time with family every single week for a lifetime. Think about what that does to a body across 50 years. The constant low hum of stress that wears most of us down never gets a chance to fully build because once a week it is forced all the way back down to zero. The researchers believe this weekly off switch is one of the most protective things the whole community does, and it is completely free. You do not need their faith to borrow the practice. 1 day a week, no work, no screens, rest, and people. Pick a day. The 12th secret grows right out of that day, and it is belonging. These are people woven into a tight community that meets constantly, knows each other, and shows up for each other in sickness, in grief, and in celebration. Loneliness is one of the quiet killers of old age, as hard on the body as a bad habit, and the people of Loma Linda are almost never alone. The 13th, close beside it, is faith itself, a sense that life has meaning and that someone larger is holding the rope. Whatever you believe, the data is clear that people who hold a deep sense of meaning and trust carry less stress and live longer. The 14th is purpose, a reason to get up in the morning that does not retire when the job does. Many of the longest lived in Loma Linda were still volunteering, still helping, and still needed well into their 90s. The reason to wake up is not a luxury, it is medicine. This is the place to tell you what we built, because almost nobody hands you all of this at once. The Blue Zone Body Reset takes the food half of Loma Linda, the plants, beans, nuts, and whole grains, and spreads it across 90 days with shopping lists and 30 recipes already done, so you are not staring at a blank kitchen trying to remember which of the 20 things to do first. But it does not stop at food, because Loma Linda proves the food is only part of the story. The plan builds in the rest day, the movement, the early, heavy, late light rhythm, and the daily structure that the long-lived all shared. So you are living the whole shape of the day, not just eating the diet. The bundle, the protocol, plus the cookbook is one printable package, and the link is in the description below. If 20 secrets feels like too much to organize on your own, that is exactly the problem the 90-day plan was built to solve. Now stay with me, because the last 6 secrets are the ones people skip, and they may matter most of all. Back to the list and into the body. The 15th secret is regular natural movement. Not gyms, not marathons, but walking, gardening, doing for themselves, and staying in motion through ordinary life. The long-lived of Loma Linda kept moving in low, constant, unglamorous ways. The kind of movement that does not feel like exercise, and so never gets skipped. The 16th is keeping a healthy weight, which for most of them was not a struggle precisely because the plant-based plate and the constant movement did the work quietly in the background. They did not diet down to a healthy weight. They lived at one. The 17th secret is time outdoors, in the sun and the green, gardening and walking in nature, which carries to the body its vitamin D and lowers stress in a way no indoor day ever will. Many of the oldest kept a garden right up to the end, and the garden gave them 3 things at once: the movement, the sunshine, and the purpose, all in one. Let me linger on the garden for a second, because it is the most quietly perfect habit in the whole town. Picture the oldest people in Loma Linda, well into their 90s, still out in the yard most mornings, pulling weeds, watering rows, bending, reaching, and carrying. The medical world spends fortunes trying to get older people to exercise, to socialize, to get sunlight, to find purpose, and to eat fresh vegetables. And here is a single activity that delivers all 5 at once, for free, without anyone ever calling it a program. The garden makes you move without making you dread it. It puts you in the sun for your vitamin D. It gives you something that needs you tomorrow, which is purpose in its simplest form. It often pulls a neighbor over to talk across the fence. And at the end of it, you are holding food you grew with your own hands. If you do only one new thing after this video, and you have a patch of dirt or even a pot on a balcony, grow something you can eat. It is 5 of the 20 secrets folded into one. The 18th is one of the food secrets I held back on purpose, and it is soy. The Adventist table leans on soy foods, tofu, soy milk, and the studies tie regular soy intake to lower rates of several of the diseases that shorten women's lives in particular. The 19th is the wider point underneath all the food ones: variety. The long-lived did not live on 3 foods. They ate a wide, colorful range of plants across the week. And that variety fed the whole system, the gut, the blood, the brain, in ways a narrow diet never could. And the 20th secret, the one that ties the whole town together, is moderation itself, the refusal to take any one thing to an extreme. They did not eat enormous portions. They did not work themselves to collapse. They did not chase the newest thing. They lived a steady, measured, unhurried life. And the steadiness was the secret hiding behind all the others. Let me put a contradiction in front of you, because it is the real lesson of Loma Linda. We are sold the idea that living longer takes something dramatic: a breakthrough drug, a patented supplement, a hard, miserable regimen that punishes you into health. Look back at the 20 secrets: plants, beans, nuts, water, a day of rest, a walk, a garden, people you love, a reason to wake up. There is nothing dramatic anywhere on that list. Every single item is ordinary, cheap, and available to you today. The people of Loma Linda did not find a secret nobody else has access to. They simply do 20 ordinary good things, most of them, most days, for their whole lives, while the rest of the country does almost none of them. The gap between their decade of extra life and ours is not built from anything exotic. It is built from the boring stuff done faithfully when nobody's watching. Before you pick where to start, do one honest thing for me. Go back through the 20 in your head and count how many you already do. The plants, the beans, the nuts, the whole grains, the water, easy on the meat, no smoking, little or no alcohol, no sugary drinks, a heavy breakfast and light supper, a weekly rest, a real community, faith or meaning, a purpose, daily movement, a healthy weight, time outdoors, soy, variety, and moderation. Count them on your fingers. Most people land somewhere between 4 and 8. Wherever you land, that number is not a judgment. It is a starting line, and it tells you exactly how much room you have to add years that you are leaving on the table right now. The people of Loma Linda did not start at 20 either. They were born into a few of these, and they added the rest over a lifetime. You are doing the same thing, just starting later, which is fine because the body is remarkably willing to reward you no matter when you begin. So here is how you start. Because 20 is a lot, and the worst thing you can do is try to swallow it whole and choke. Pick 3, just 3, from anywhere on the list. The 3 that feel easiest for the life you actually live. Maybe it is the handful of nuts, the 5 glasses of water, and the early supper. Maybe it is the weekly rest day, the daily walk, and the pot of beans. It does not matter which 3. What matters is that you do them every day until they stop feeling like effort and start feeling like who you are. Then, in a month, add 3 more. That is exactly how the people of Loma Linda got here. Not in a heroic week, but in a slow lifetime of small, stacked, ordinary choices. And if a voice in the back of your head is whispering that you are already too old for any of this to matter, let me put that voice to rest because it is wrong, and the Loma Linda data proves it. The body does not stop responding to good food and movement and rest at 60 or 70 or 80. It keeps responding right to the end. The blood pressure still comes down, the strength still comes back, the energy still returns. The people in that community who added these habits late in life still pulled years and vitality out of the change. You have not missed the window. The window does not close while you are still breathing. Every one of these 20 starts working the day you start doing it, no matter what the number on your last birthday cake was. The full 90-day plan, with all of this organized week by week and the recipes done for you, is waiting in the description. Subscribe so the next zone comes to your feed, and we will keep walking these long-lived towns together. 20 secrets gathered from 100,000 lives and half a century of watching who lasted. None of them exotic, none of them out of reach. Pick 3. Start tonight. If these lessons from the long-lived residents of Loma Linda have changed the way you think about your daily habits, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. We are dedicated to uncovering the history and the lifestyle secrets that have been overlooked for too long. Let's cultivate a healthier future together. The next treasury of wisdom will be open soon.